So now we are going to talk about hormones. Have you ever had butterflies in your stomach before an important examination? Maybe your heart rate also increased and your hands became cold or sweaty. These symptoms are caused by hormones. What are hormones? A hormone is a chemical substance produced in minute quantities by an endocrine gland. It is transported in the bloodstream to target organs where it exerts its effects. After the hormones have performed their functions, they are eventually destroyed by the liver. Where are the hormones produced? The hormones are produced by glands. Basically, there are two types of glands, exocrine gland and the endocrine gland. The endocrine gland, which is also known as the ductless glands, do not have a duct to carry away its secretion, and the hormones produced by the ductless glands are directly secreted into the bloodstream. Now, the hormone production must be adequate and balanced to ensure that the body functions normally. However, excess production of certain hormones may be harmful. Now, let's discuss about some hormonal secretion of endocrine glands. The diagram shows the hypothalamus, which is an endocrine gland that regulates the secretion of some pituitary hormones. Beneath the hypothalamus is the pituitary gland, which plays an important role as a controller, as it controls the secretion of several other endocrine hormones, and it also secretes the antidiuretic hormone. Just in the abdominal cavity above the kidneys, you can see the adrenal gland, which secretes adrenaline. Adrenaline has wide-ranging effects on body. Just below the kidneys is the pancreas. The islets of Langerhans in the pancreas secrete insulin and glucagon. Then comes the ovary, present in females, which secretes estrogen and progesterone, and the testes in male, responsible for secreting testosterone. Now let's study some of the hormones that are part of our syllabus in detail. First comes insulin. Insulin is a hormone which is secreted by the islets of Langerhans in the pancreas. Insulin promotes the utilization of glucose by the cells. More insulin is produced when the concentration of blood glucose increases above normal levels. How does insulin function? In a normal human being's body, where the insulin production is normal and optimal, the insulin decreases the blood glucose concentration by increasing the permeability of cell membrane to glucose, thereby increasing the rate of glucose uptake by cells, stimulating the liver and muscle cells to convert glucose into glycogen for storage, increasing oxidation of glucose during tissue respiration. Let's take a look at this illustration of how insulin works. Basically, this large brown part is the cell, and they have described insulin as the key. When this key or insulin attaches to the cell, it opens the channel through which glucose can move inside the cell. This is a function of insulin, that it increases the uptake of glucose by the cells, making the cell more permeable. So what happens when there is an imbalance of insulin in the body? Whenever there is a lack of secretion of insulin by the islets of Langerhans, the blood glucose concentration rises. Some glucose is subsequently lost in urine. It gives rise to a disease called diabetes mellitus. The body grows weak and loses weight as the muscle cells have no reserve of glycogen. Body oxidizes fats instead of glucose to produce energy, and this results in the production of poisonous substances called ketones, which are excreted in urine as ketonuria. However, when more insulin is secreted than usual, there is an abnormal decrease in blood glucose concentration, which results in a condition called SHAW. Coma and death may follow. The second hormone after insulin is glucagon. It is also secreted by the islets of Langerhans in the pancreas. Glucagon increases blood glucose concentration. More glucagon is produced when the concentration of blood glucose decreases below normal levels. How does glucagon work? The main target of glucagon is liver. It increases the blood glucose concentration by stimulating the conversion of glycogen into glucose and the conversion of fats and amino acids into glucose. Insulin and glucagon together regulate the blood glucose concentration. This is an example of a homeostatic mechanism. We all are aware of a disease which is highly common among us and is usually referred to as sugar. I myself have both my parents who have this disease called diabetes mellitus. Diabetes mellitus is a disease in which the body is unable to control its blood glucose concentration so that it remains within normal limits. There are two main types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 develops early in a person's life, hence it is known as juvenile or early onset diabetes, in which the islets of Langerhans are unable to produce sufficient insulin. The type 2 occurs in a person's later in a person's life, hence known as late onset diabetes. The overweight people are likely to develop type 2 diabetes. The target cells, such as muscle cells, do not respond well to insulin in this type. What are the symptoms of diabetes? Signs of diabetes mellitus are a persistently high blood glucose level, the presence of glucose in the urine after a meal, and slow and difficult healing of wounds. How can diabetes mellitus be treated? Diabetics have to measure their blood glucose concentration, test their urine regularly, and they must also watch their diet carefully, making sure that they do not take any too much carbohydrate. People with type 1 diabetes have to inject insulin directly into the bloodstream. They also have to ensure that they have a supply of sugary foods such as glucose sweets, as their blood glucose can drop too low if they use too much insulin, exercise too much, or eat too little. In severe cases, low blood glucose may cause them to go into a coma. People with type 2 diabetes can usually control their blood sugar level by carefully regulating the carbohydrate content in their diet and by exercising. If lifestyle changes fail, type 2 diabetes may have to take medication and insulin injections. Now comes the third hormone, adrenaline. Adrenaline is released by the adrenal glands present on the kidneys. This hormone prepares your body for fight, flight, or fright situations. For example, when a person is afraid, angry, anxious, or stressed. Adrenaline is a short-lived hormone, therefore responses that arise from the secretion of adrenaline are temporary. Take a close look towards this diagram showing how the adrenal medulla responds to stimuli. Firstly, the stimuli such as anger or stress activates the hypothalamus in the brain, which transmits the impulses down the spinal cord from the where the impulses are transmitted by the motor neuron to the adrenal gland. It is the function of the adrenal gland to release adrenaline in the bloodstream that is transported through blood to the target organs. This is a step-by-step description or a summary of how adrenaline works. What are the effects of adrenaline on the body? So it has various impacts, such as it stimulates the liver to convert glycogen to glucose so that more glucose is available for muscle contraction. Increased blood glucose concentration, for example, when more glucose is released from the liver into the bloodstream. Increased metabolic rate. This means more energy is released in tissue respiration. Increased heartbeat, which causes a rise in blood pressure so that oxygen and glucose are carried faster to the muscles. Increases rate and depth of ventilation. These increase the rate of uptake of oxygen by lungs. Increases the rate of blood clotting. For example, when a skin is cut, the blood clots faster to prevent excessive loss of blood. Constricts arterioles in the gut, to thereby decreasing the digestive activities. Constricts arterioles in skin, causing paleness, thus channeling more blood to the muscles, for example in the limbs. Dilates pupil to enhance vision, and constricts hair muscles, producing goosebumps and causing hair to stand on end. The fourth and the last hormone of our syllabus is ADH, or antidiuretic hormone, also known as vasopressin. It is released by the pituitary gland into the bloodstream and helps to regulate the water potential or the osmotic pressure of the blood. One thing to always remember is that whenever water potential increases, the osmotic pressure of the blood will decrease, and vice versa, because more the osmotic pressure, more is the thirst of the cell. Now let's consider the diagram showing what happens. Now let's consider the diagram showing what happens when the water potential in our body either increases or decreases. In the middle you can see a purple box which shows the water potential at norm. Now let's move upwards towards the right when the water potential in blood decreases. This can happen due to loss of water through profuse sweating. Hypothalamus is stimulated. Now, the mechanism that takes place is called corrective mechanism, in which more ADH is released by the pituitary gland into the bloodstream and more ADH is transported to the kidneys. Cells in the walls of the collecting duct become more permeable to water and more water is reabsorbed into the bloodstream. Less water is excreted, the urine is more concentrated, and less urine is produced. As a result, the water potential in the blood increases and returns to norm. However, if we move downwards towards the left where the water potential has increased above norm, for example due to large intake of water, the hypothalamus is stimulated and the corrective mechanism that now takes place is that less ADH is released by pituitary gland into the bloodstream and less ADH is transported to the kidneys. Cells in the walls of the collecting duct become less permeable to water and less water is reabsorbed in the bloodstream. More water is excreted and urine is more diluted and more urine is produced. As a result, the water potential of blood decreases. In both cases, when the water potential is brought back to its norm or set point, a stimuli is again sent to the hypothalamus to stop. These are the hormones in total. The last subtopic of this chapter is a comparison between endocrine glands and nervous control. The endocrine or the hormonal system, like the nervous system, serves as a means of coordination within your body. In both cases, a stimulus causes this transmission of a message to a target organ, known as the effector, which carries out the response. However, the nervous control differs from the endocrine control in several ways. For example, nervous control may affect only a particular part of your body, that is, it is localized. Since hormones are usually transported around your body by the blood, several target organs may be affected by the same hormone. An example of this is the effect of adrenaline on your heart, arteries, iris, and metabolic rate. That is all. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you would have liked and enjoyed my work. Now it's time that I see how much you guys have learned from it. I am going to open some questions related to this topic and you guys are going to answer them. So the first question is that what is the role of adrenaline and where is it destroyed in the body? What are the symptoms of diabetes? A person with diabetes mellitus is receiving treatment with insulin injections. The graph shows how this person's blood glucose concentration changed during part of one day. At what point was insulin injection given? And when a person is frightened, which substance causes an increase in the blood sugar levels?